Hello, everyone, and good afternoon. Welcome to AIM Tip 7, where we're going to be looking at allocating your resources. It's so glad to have you all with us this afternoon. And just a reminder, as we usually do at the beginning of each of these, make sure that you change your Zoom name tag. So make sure you change your name in the participants list, or you can also use the three dots next to your Hollywood square. Change it so that we have your state show up first. And I see a number of people in the participants list have already done that. They're veterans of this. So you start with your state abbreviation and then your name. So that really helps us keep track of who's who. I see Kristen has done that, MO from Missouri, and then followed by her name. So thank you everyone for doing that. And just to give you an idea or a roadmap for where we've been and where we're going today, we've been looking at the quality indicators over the last few weeks. And today we're touching on indicator number 7, allocation of resources. You can see last week we focused on data collection and use. And then in previous weeks, we've looked at the comprehensive learning opportunities and technical assistance, written guidelines, timely manner, and then what we started on the 25th of March on a coordinated system. So we've covered quite a bit of ground over this series. So I just want to share with you before we get started with today's topic that there have been some updates to the website. We actually have the quality indicators with critical components available now for download. So I just want to exit here from my slides. Let's see if I can do that and bring up the website and just show you where those are located. So as a reminder, you'll always find the quality indicators with critical components under our coordinate tab. So now if I go to the K-12, as just an example, look for this blue box towards the middle of the screen. And right here, you'll find a link and it will take you to the critical components for K-12 in this case. And then you can download the document. So this is one of our resource pages, and you'll see a link here that says download the guide, and that will allow you to download the critical components or the quality indicators with critical components. I will also drop in the chat a link to the resources for today. So just give me 1 second while I locate those. I'll go ahead and copy the link, drop it in the chat. So that will give you access to the slides for this afternoon. And just in case, I have added a link to the critical components there as well. So let me drop those in place for you. And if as people come in, some people may come in a little bit later. If you could just go ahead and reshare that link in the chat, I'll greatly appreciate that. So check out that resource for you on the website. Again, we've just updated that in the last couple of weeks. So just in case you haven't seen it, check it out. All right, so as I said at the beginning, today we're going to be looking at quality indicator 7, allocating resources. So just to get us all on the same page here, I want to go over the statement and the intent. So first, the statement. The statement is that the agency allocates resources that are sufficient to ensure the delivery and sustainability of quality services to learners with disabilities who need accessible materials and technologies. And the intent is that there are sufficient fiscal, human, and infrastructure resources committed to ensure that learners' needs are appropriately addressed through the determination of need, the provision of appropriate accessible materials and technologies, the delivery of services, and learning opportunities. So let's dig into that a little bit more by looking at the critical components. And this one is probably one of the brief ones in terms of the critical components. There's just 2 points here. The first one is 7.1. So we want to make sure resources that are provided for fiscal, human, and infrastructure needs. And often we just think about the fiscal resources, but we also want to consider the human and infrastructure ones as well. So in terms of the fiscal resources, we want to coordinate and raid funds from a number of sources. ESSA is a possibility, the Every Student Succeeds Act, IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and so on. But then, as I mentioned, we also want to make sure we consider those human resources, that human capital. So we want to make sure that it's training, appropriate technical assistance and training that is informed by local district needs. And you all are doing some of that right now, determining what your needs are, setting some goals through the use of the AIM pilot, and then creating a plan for how you're going to accomplish those goals. And part of that should be robust training and technical assistance as well. So again, we're building up that human capital that is necessary. And continuing with 7.1, we also want to address the infrastructure. So that means that we're acquiring technology that meets accessibility requirements, means that we're addressing accessibility through procurement and making sure that the purchase and maintenance of digital materials and technologies, that they're accessible, that they're interoperable with the assistive technologies that are in use. And part of this as well is in addressing that infrastructure, we also want to make sure that we're addressing things like wireless access. So we want to make sure that it's not just the devices, but that those devices are able to connect and they're able to provide that access to learners. And then 7.2 just says resources that are used to address the needs of all stakeholders, including all students being served and their families. So again, it's just those 2 points for the critical components for this quality indicator number 7, which is all about allocating resources. All right. So last week, we gave you a little bit of homework in preparation for this afternoon's session. But I do understand that you are all really busy. So maybe you didn't get a chance to visit those resources, and that's okay. Because I will share them again with you. They're included in the slides. But just in case, I want to highlight some of the key points. In terms of resources, the American Rescue Plan has some provisions in it that you may be able to take advantage of. So what I'm going to do here is just provide you with some of the highlights and then see if you have any questions. So this is, by a lot of indications, one of the largest ever, if not the largest, investments in education. So it's 170 billion for education. And that includes 122.8 billion for K-12 SEAs. And this is based on the Title I funding formula. And then we have 40 billion for institutions of higher education. IDEA, there's $3 billion. And out of that, 200 million for preschool programs and 250 million for infants and toddler programs. And then one of the provisions addresses the needs for students who are experiencing homelessness. So there's 800 million that has been set aside for that. So that's kind of the big picture with the different buckets that are including in this American Rescue Plan. But then there's also some requirements. So at the state level, there's a requirement that 90% of the state's grant must be provided in subgrants to local education agencies or LEAs. 5% of the funding must address learning loss through a variety of evidence-based interventions that address the social, emotional, academic needs of students. 1% needs to be set aside for summer enrichment programs, and then 1% for after-school programs. I see a question, Crystal. You're asking, can we have extended time? Can you let me know what you need? Or you can use the chat as well. You can unmute yourself.
Oh, yeah, for the homework, Louise, you know,
I got you.
so we have extended time for the homework. Sorry, you were presenting and, you know, I was in the chat box.
That's okay. You can, well, I'm giving you the Cliff Notes. How many of you used Cliff Notes back in the day? You didn't use them as a substitute, right? You used it as an enhancement to your studying, I hope. So this is the Cliff Notes on the American Rescue Plan. But again, we have links to a number of organizations that provided similar summaries. This is just a quick summary for you. So there's those requirements for SEAs, but there are also some requirements for local education agencies or LEAs. From their funding, 20% of the funding needs to be aimed at addressing learning loss. I put it in quotes there because I'm not a big fan of that term, learning loss. It really is sort of some ways focusing on deficits, but I would argue that our learners have also learned a lot during the last year. As the parent of you know, someone who is going through this this interesting time, they've learned a lot. Whether it's resilience or just different ways of learning and working. So, you know, that's the term that's used though. So that's the term that we have in terms of the American Rescue Plan. So you'll see that over and over. So 20% needs to be used to address learning loss through a variety of different interventions. And then the remaining funds can be used for any allowable expense or any allowable use under existing laws. So let me give you some examples of that. That could be expenses that are allowed under IDEA, under ESSA, and then for career and technical education under Perkins. It could be you know, meeting the needs of students and teachers, including professional learning. So that's an allowable use. And then the purchase of educational technology as well. That is also an allowable use. And of course, evidence-based practices to meet the comprehensive needs of students with disabilities. Now, I don't know about you, but I have been seeing a lot of ads on TV targeting stimulus funds. I've seen a number of commercials, you know, you've gotten your stimulus check, here's what you can do with it. So we may see a number of pitches now that this ARP funding, American Rescue Plan funding, is, you know, going out as to, you know, here's what you can do with it. Here's exactly, Deb just said, and emails from my AT vendors. So again, you may see that pitch saying, you know, here's how you can use that ARP funding. So this is a great opportunity to think about procurement and to think about procurement in terms of accessibility and interoperability. So there are a number of resources on our website that if you haven't checked out in the past, I would encourage you to visit. So we have pages on communicating digital accessibility requirements. I will open these up on my web browser in a second and just give you a quick tour. But when you're starting those conversations with vendors, this is a great place to go. There's some sample language. There's also information about what you can ask the vendors, what the different standards are. So it's a good one-stop shop for a lot of that digital accessibility information. We have a page on vetting for accessibility. So as you evaluate resources, what are the questions that you should ask to make sure that every learner has a good experience? And we've used the 4 POUR principles from the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines to organize those questions. Perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust, right? So those are 4 qualities that we want to look for in an accessible experience. And then there's the documentation of accessibility and the VPAT, the Voluntary Product Accessibility Template. And that's not a perfect documentation of accessibility. There are some limitations to it, but it's good to know what should be in the VPAT and how to interpret it. So we have a resource that can help with that. So again, as we look at procurement during this, unique opportunity that we have to use some of that funding from ARP and from other sources to keep that accessibility at the forefront of procurement. So let me pause there, see if there are any questions in the chat. I see your comments are coming through. So Donna says, yes, Google anything about ESSER funds, ESSER, and there are ads galore. So I'm sure they're putting on a really thick pitch, right, Donna?
Hey, Louise, I was wondering.
A couple of comments. Oh, go ahead, Kristen. Go first.
Sorry, I was just going to ask. So on that PowerPoint, they're not actually links. They're just, they look like it, but they're not. Is it just on the site?
Yeah, there should be links. Sorry about that.
No, it's okay. Well, the first one isn't, and the last one wasn't.
Let me double check those links to make sure.
Okay.
You should never do something 5 minutes before you go live.
I can't imagine. You've never done that. No, none of us have ever done that. I mean,
That should be a rule of thumb.
I don't know what group of people you think you're talking to. We've never done anything last minute, any of us.
So I will make sure that those links are fixed and re-upload the slides. But again, you could find them. I'm just going to give you a quick tour in just a second anyway.
Awesome. Great. Thank you.
So Deb, you had a couple of comments.
Yes, and first of all, I know that you and I and Cynthia are presenting on Monday, so don't be surprised if I'm one of those last minute slide persons. I tweak and I add and all the way up to the last minute, so I might come sliding into home with that. When I think about what you've got here, vetting for accessibility, and over the last year and thinking about and I haven't gone in here to look, but when I think about the big issues, what people were buying, the learning management system was one of those. And so across our country, I know there were people who were already well developed in that world, but here in Oregon, we had a lot of people who weren't there at all. So we really came across some of that learning management system. And so, we have somewhat of a checklist for the learning management system that I shared with you. But I also know that when we are talking to vendors, one of the common issues is that we're never on the same page as far as a definition for accessibility. And so I know you've got verbiage in here, but even whenever I to say to somebody, I've been talking to the folks in Zoom, well, they really are attentive, and so they're coming along quite nicely. But there are some others that and they say what we're talking about, but they shut down because they have nothing to back up what they're saying. They really aren't on the same page as far as what we're talking about. So I know one of the things we'll be sharing is how to share this out, but really over the last year, people buying things quickly and not for curriculum. I've shared on here before how the Florida Virtual Schools curriculum was a big purchase, but I'm hearing a lot of superintendents saying, spend, spend, spend. And we've still got that same cycle of let's spend in a hurry. And so I'm nervous about these things, but because we're having these conversations, I just have to say it's getting better.
Well, that's exactly what we want to hear, Deb, that it is getting better. And hopefully with these tools that I will share in just a minute, that can help with that conversation to make sure that we're all.
Even whenever the companies say they have an expert, they are not able to answer our questions. That's one of my points.
Yeah.
The other thing is, you bring up a really good point, Deb, in terms of that learning management system. And that's part of that infrastructure, right? So we can have the documents, the individual documents be accessible. We can have, the ebooks be accessible, but often they are shared with students through a learning management system. And that learning management system also has to support accessibility. So that's part of that infrastructure that's similar to Wi-Fi, right? you have the best device, but if you can't do much with it in terms of accessing the outside world and getting access to resources, it's not that helpful. So the same thing with the learning management system, it has to be accessible. Let's see, who else had a comment or a question?
Hi, Louise, it's Mary Lane from New Hampshire. So one of the things that we are actually in the moment trying to look at is what kind of guidance can we provide districts and schools to use their dollars that are coming down under the whatever ESSER or CARE or the new one about loss of learning. Actually, the commissioner and deputy asked for what specific language would it look like. So it'll be a little twist from what the procurement resources language maybe. Could we have some help in that? Do you think, to get that? So some states are doing this. They're saying, here's some guidelines of what you might want to be able to use those funds to do. Because I think exactly what you're pitching about, yeah, they might have an ebook, but the learning platform, they're just out there trying to purchase the right thing. And it would be nice if they had like a guide of some sort beyond the port, like from their language, so that they know, boots on the ground running, what is it I'm looking for, and what do I say it correctly? I think this actually was something that happened a couple of years ago when we're trying to help districts when they purchase the curriculum, what should the letter look like? Joy Zabala helped us write it. So if we could have any help on that, I would greatly appreciate it.
Absolutely, we're happy to help at any time. So you should be able to see my web browser. Just give me a thumbs up in the chat if you're able to. All right. So let me just go over these resources. And it gives us a chance to give you a quick tour of the website too. So we have this Acquire tab. It's the second tab from the left. And let me start with communicating accessibility requirements. And then we'll see if some of this gets at what a couple of you have brought up. So the first thing here is that there is some sample language here. So take a look at that sample language. That could be really helpful. It may answer some of the questions that you have, and this is something you can share as well. Then it's important to have an understanding of what standards are we addressing when we're procuring. So we have that information. But what's really important here as well is that vendors can provide documentation in the form of a VPAT, but the VPAT has some limitations. So often you do have to do some sort of authentic testing as well on your end. So we have some suggestions for how to do some of that testing, some of the things that you need to keep in mind as best practices for making sure that that documentation that they provide actually means what it says it means. And then there's some information here for vendors, how to optimize product accessibility. So as you're engaging in those conversations, you can share this language here. These are some of the things you can do to optimize your products for accessibility. So we can continue that conversation with them and really bring about change in their, not just in that one product that you're purchasing, but in their practices going forward, so that when they update that product or when they develop new products, they're following these best practices. So that's all in this one page around how do we communicate digital accessibility requirements. The other page, it's on the same tab and it's under vetting for accessibility. Again, it's those questions that you can use to evaluate content for accessibility based on the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. Is it perceivable? Can everyone get to the information and use it? Is it operable? Can people navigate in a variety of different ways? Is it understandable? Is it intuitive, easy to use? And then is it robust? So does it work across a range of different platforms? So these are helpful resources. And then the last one that I want to highlight here is understanding the VPAT. And what we've done here is taken a fictitious company that we've created and then created a VPAT, an example VPAT, and section by section, we go through and we tell you in this section, this is what you should look for. These are the best practices. So you can go through that. It's almost like an ongoing commentary. We call them AIM-Center notes for each of the sections. So the VPAT has limitations, but it can be helpful if you're comparing a number of products to have a standard format, right? That you can look across these different VPATs and make some comparisons. But again, it's just one way to document accessibility. So let me stop there, see if there are any questions about those three resources. So again, as we look at procurement, and as Deb said, instead of purchasing fast, purchasing smart, then we can use some of these resources. Any questions over the chat, or you can also unmute yourself.
I just shared a link, Luis, that was shared with me this week that really is an in-depth in one spot about the funding in K-12. So hopefully it will help somebody else.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that, Deb. We always like any of you that have resources, share them in the chat. That's a great part about being part of a cohort. Together, we're much stronger. And then I see here, does anyone have a document preparing for the accessible encounter before, during, and after a class or webinar? Can you just say a little bit more? Just want to make sure that we understand.
I think I've mentioned this to you before, but obviously, Luis, when you're getting ready for preparing for an event, whether it's a webinar or some kind of a training, when you're sending out materials in advance, is there a checklist that says this is what they need to be? And so I'm asking that partly because as we have our conference coming up next week, I'm going in and I'm saying, okay, are the handouts that people have given me, are they accessible? And so some people that I'm seeing are putting them in there that I absolutely know the meaning of accessibility, but there are no tags, alt tags behind any of their pictures. And so when I'm thinking about if I want to give clues for what that means for presenters in the future, is there something I could say before you come, here's what you need to do during the meeting, turn on closed captioning. Is there a certain size of something that you should do? Well, I know when people on the other end can change things that it's not as important for us to say number size, font size, because people can counter that. But I'm just thinking and getting ready for what should I consider, during what should I consider, and then post what should I consider, because I see so many things through those processes that are just not accessible. So I know you've got some good resources, but if there was one cheat sheet that I could give to everybody all the way up and down the line that says, this is how you get ready, is there one?
So yes.
A long-winded question, but I'm just thinking when it boils down to what everybody could use, that might be one of them.
So a couple of things. Yes, we have a couple of handouts on our website, and I'll try to share those in the chat that address, the basics. So as somebody's preparing for a presentation or an upcoming event, probably not the best time to go into the details of WCAG, but rather provide them with 5 or 6 things that they can do in a short amount of time that will result in a better experience. What I've shared in the
Obviously,
chat,
I'm not trying to do this for next week because I'm not going to throw wrenches when everybody's already in there, but I'm just looking at the things that are needed and more direction on what needs to be done. What I'm looking for.
What I've done is the resource that I've shared in the chat, the last link there is from the W3C. And the title is a little bit misleading because it says how to make your presentations accessible to everyone. And it really should be how to make your events accessible to everyone, because you'll find that there's different roles involved when you have an event or a presentation. So there is information on there for organizers. So as you plan the event, here are the things to think about. There's information for those who are presenting. Here's the things to think about. And then post. So when you share your resources and follow up, there's information on there as well. So this would be a good starting point, Deb. And of course, we can always, you can always reach out to us. We are happy to provide guidance. All right, so let me go back here and share my screen again. Also, you'll be happy to know, I was going to announce this at the end, but I will give you a teaser right now. That's one of the things we are considering for our next AIM Tips series, is how to make accessible content, right? Accessible documents, presentations, so that we are building our own skills, and then we can model that for those that we work with. So stay tuned. But these are the resources we shared last week with you all. You'll have these slides. Hopefully these are links. So with these, really, they're very short. Each article should only take you about 5 minutes. But if you want to go through and learn more about ARP funding and the different stipulations and requirements, these are available for you to access. And then CAS is doing a webinar, an upcoming webinar. Actually, it's next week on the 27th. So if you want to learn more about ARP, that's a good opportunity. You can register at bit.ly, UDL-ARP webinar. So that's a short link, and I'll drop that into the chat for you all. That will take you to the registration page. Yes, Deb, in answer to your question, that will be recorded as well. So if you can't make it on Tuesday, you have the opportunity to watch the recording for that webinar. So
I think it's a great one to share with all of our leadership team and all of our teams, though. I can't make it, but
absolutely.
Information is always going to be a good thing.
Absolutely, shared widely, and look forward to seeing you at that webinar. Okay, so any other questions about Quality Indicator 7? So again, this is about allocating those resources, making sure that we're addressing not just the fiscal considerations, but also the human capital considerations, the infrastructure. You know, we talked about a number of those infrastructure items like wireless access, devices, learning management systems. So, you know, that's Quality Indicator 7. But that brings us to the end of the AIM Tips series. So I thought it would be a great time to have a little bit of reflection. Looking at the participants list here, I see a number of you who have been to several of these tips. And so I want to make sure that we have a little bit of time to reflect on the whole, because the quality indicators, right, we can take them apart and look at each of these in more detail, but really they're meant to work together as a whole. So the sum is greater than the parts, right? They're interdependent. So with Quality Indicator 7, you know, these resources will make it possible for us to address Quality Indicator 4, right? We have allowable uses for training and technical assistance. Or we could, with these fiscal resources, address any gaps in data that we have by developing better collection systems or better analysis systems. So these are all interconnected is basically what I want to say. So I want to provide you all with a little bit of time to reflect on the series as a whole, the quality indicators as a whole, by having us break out into smaller groups here. So what I'm going to do here is exit out of the slides. And then I never do this. I never do the breakout rooms. There's usually someone on our webinars who does it. So fingers crossed. And somebody said grace earlier. Give me some grace, please. So let me go over here to the breakout rooms, and I will set up a few of these breakout rooms. Let's see. We have 24 people. So I'm going to set up 4 breakout rooms. I'm not able to go into the breakout rooms because I'm the host, so I have to stay here in the main room. But this is just an opportunity for you to reflect individually or in smaller groups on the quality indicators as a whole. So let me just first share the prompt, and then I will break you out into these rooms for a few minutes. So what has been your biggest takeaway from this series? What are the aha moments that you've had that you want to share with others in your group and then with the cohort as a whole? What are your wonders? What are the things that you still have some questions about? And then finally, what are your next steps? So what are some next steps that have come up from participating in this series? It could be a new resource that you're going to check out because that would be really helpful as a next step. Or it could be somebody that you're going to reach out to make some connections. So I'm going to set these breakout rooms and we'll do this for about 10 minutes and then we'll come back together to have some larger group discussion. They're random, so you are going to make some new friends. You may be making some new friends, and that's okay. The more the merrier in our conversations. So fingers crossed that this works. So here we go. I'm going to send you to a breakout room. Hi, Nancy. Are you unable to get to one of the breakout rooms? All right, well, welcome back, everybody. Hope you all made it through the teleportation process intact. So before we get started, just want to leave a few minutes here just for open sharing based on your reflection. I do want to share, we have a survey related to this series, and we would really appreciate it if you could fill out that survey and provide your feedback. So I've gone ahead and share the link to the survey. It should only take you 4 to 5 minutes. So this is a process survey, and would really appreciate your feedback about the entire series, what worked, what we can do better, especially as we plan our second series. So we're thinking about this like they do with TV shows in the UK. Series 1 is concluding today, but Series 2 is already in production. So stay tuned. So who wants to start us off? What in your group, what were some of the aha moments as you went through the series in terms of your understanding of the quality indicators? Or takeaways, any kind of takeaway?
So Louise, I'll speak up for the little group that I was in. We love the tips. We love the information we get. If there was a way to have like one resource site with all the tips, instead of having a different link each week to go to the SharePoint, if we could have everything in one place, and that might be your ultimate plan, to put it all in one place. You know, a little appetizer here, a little appetizer there. Exactly, man behind the green curtain.
This is in the works. So we are working on creating just a one-stop space for you all that will be password protected, so that you can access all of the resources that you need, including the quality indicators and contact lists and so on. So stay tuned, but great suggestion, Crystal. Great minds think alike.
Well, that wasn't just my suggestion, so I can't take credit for it all. And then we also wanted to know, you know, when we go to our breakout room, sometimes during a tip, maybe, you know, we get something really good, but what we need to do is actually talk to our team members who are on here so that we can use the time to work within our teams. But then there's still times that I need to hear from New Hampshire. I need to know what's going on in New Hampshire so that I don't feel like, you know, I'm so far behind, or Kristen's already looked at something that I got a question about. And I said that because I see you right there, Kristen. And, you know, So if there could be a combination, sometimes you're with your states, sometimes you're like heterogeneous. I don't know.
Oh, that's a good suggestion. Sometimes there's specific problem of practice that you want to address within your state. So maybe having a little dedicated time to make some connections around that topic would be helpful. But I think there's also value in just kind of sharing across the cohort, because sometimes you may not know what another state's doing that could prevent you from reinventing the wheel if you can
Well, and,
connect
you
with
know,
them.
sometimes for me, it's nice to know, while I feel, and I know we speak slow here in North Carolina, but that when we're looking at the quality indicators, and I'm even looking at, okay, yeah, we got a definition for timely manner, right? But do we have data to support how long it's taking? And if anybody out there has data or has a way to track your data for timely manner, please come off mute and say, Crystal, I got the magic answer for you, and here it is.
Well, that was quality, the tip before this one. We looked at data in some details. So, but if anyone has any ideas, feel free to share, but definitely go back and check out. We have the recording. All of these are being recorded, and we'll have the closed caption recording to review as well.
Kind of building off of what Crystal was saying, maybe even a place where we can gather when we're not in these meetings, just because I know, and I appreciate that you have scheduled them at different times, because I can't always miss the same session every single week. But having a place for us to communicate with each, even if it's like a Padlet or something, so you can have these different places where, you know, we're all not going to be on the same tip at the same time. So, you know, maybe we're looking at 6 first, and maybe Crystal, because she picked on me before, I'm going to pick on her now, is working on 2, but I'm not ready to talk about 2 yet. But maybe she already looked at, you know what I mean? Just so we can kind of put our own ideas into it. I think chat boards can get overwhelming sometimes because there's so much, but like a quick resource, like a Flipgrid or a Padlet or something like that, that we can kind of drop our stuff into as a group and then kind of build from there.
I like it. And of course, one of the challenges is not all those tools are accessible. So we'll do our homework to make sure that we are using a tool that is accessible so that you all can access the resources. Everyone can access the resources, but good tip.
Just go ahead and cross Jamboard off of that.
How about in terms of the quality indicators too? So a couple of things. Please make sure that as you respond to the survey, all these great suggestions, make sure that you provide that feedback to us. We really value it. Want to make sure that it's captured. But how about in terms of the quality indicators themselves? Any aha moments or insights or wonders?
This is Paula with our group, and my comment originally was, wow, I liked how I could kind of better understand what the indicators were in a less complicated kind of way. And it seemed like it was rolling well. And then Thea pointed out, yeah, but as the more you learn, the more you know what you don't know, right? So as we are listening and hearing and moving forward, it's like, oh yeah, that makes it, oh, but I had no idea, but I thought I had an idea, right? So it's kind of opening up our knowledge base. Thea said she's kind of new to this role, right? Doing this AIM stuff. So it was good to know that her knowledge base is opening, and I kind of equated it to playing a sport. So it's like, hey, I thought that I was a great soccer player back in the day when I first started playing soccer. I could kick the ball and run fast as everybody. And then I learned the game of soccer, and I realized that I was not so good at the game of soccer, right? So why do I need to have passing lanes, and why do I need to look for this and that, right? So learning more about what we don't know, thinking that we do know, right? So that's what this has helped me do.
And it's a continuous improvement process. So that's the other thing to keep in mind, that, we're not going to be perfect right off the gate. This is a process. So trust the process is basically what I would say. That's what my advisor, when I was doing my doctorate, said. Trust the process. You'll cry. There's lots of crying involved in the PhD program, but just stick with it and trust the process. So the same thing here, and I'll share a quote. A friend of mine who works at CAST as well, Mindy Johnson, always says, do the best you can until you know better. And then when you know better, do better. That's from Maya Angelou. I can't take credit. But it's the idea that we're continuously improving our processes, our guidelines, our technical assistance. It's really, that's what it's all about. It's continuous growth and improvement.
And Luis, I'd like to add to that to say something that Paula said is sometimes we go in and we think that we know, and sometimes it's better to put that what some might say is expert hat aside and pretend that you don't, and it just brings you into a conversation in a different way. But what I really gained out of today was the chance to talk to the folks in Missouri who said they just completed their first of the quality indicators, and so in looking at how they approach those discussions, I found it very helpful to know that they had been through that cycle, but when they went through it, they had their districts, but they didn't necessarily take their districts through that process with. Where we are is we, as the leadership team, had already gone through those processes with the quality indicators, and it's coming back to the quality indicator piece, obviously. So there are going to be those who need to have a big vision of quality indicators. Are they invited in all of the conversations? Well, that's one thing we're looking at, who needs to be there. But I just feel that there's value for all to be there on this discussion to see how they can. But also sometimes when we think that we know, we don't come to these meetings. I know that that I have been asked, well, what are you getting out of them? And I say the same thing that when I go to a conference, if I go believing that I'm not going to learn anything, then I've got the wrong attitude, because I'm open to know that my conversation with Mary Lane may be the exact reason that I'm here. And so, you know, they're just looking at those things. But the thing that you said in coming up with a shared resource, I know originally we started off in SharePoint, and that's where y'all are comfortable. And so now we kind of, because here in Oregon, it was about Google. But one thing I shared in the beginning was when we all went virtual, we had no idea where everybody was at, and most of our districts didn't either. So I shared that I started with a technology inventory to help people to either come on the same page as where they're at. And so I used that with our districts last week. We just brought 5 districts on board, and I used that with them. And it is starting to be amazing with just 3 districts information in there. I'm just saying that having them look at the tools that are in their toolbox already. I'm happy to share that inventory with you again, but I've had some real aha moments that tie to quality indicators and goals. I know I don't know what I should be saying, but some good stuff, and I'm so excited I can't shut up.
No, we're so glad that you're excited. I see Mary is clapping, giving you a thumbs up. So if you don't mind sharing that, absolutely. And if you don't have a chance to share it in the chat, make sure to send it to us, and we'll make sure to share it as well. So we are coming up on the end of our hour here. So thank you, Judy, for adding that comment in the chat. Just to remind you that there is that survey. I'll add the link one more time. Remember that, as Judy just mentioned, it's confidential. It's administered by our external evaluator, EEC, Evergreen. And so please provide us with the feedback, the good, the bad, no uglies. Just but the positive, constructive, whatever that feedback may be, the goal here is for us to improve these offerings and make sure that they're meeting your needs. So we're happy to get any feedback that you want to provide us with. So again, as I mentioned, in addition to that survey, want to wrap up by letting you know we are in the planning stages to deliver a second series of AIM tips focusing on accessible content creation, to make sure that, you know, whatever we create as a cohort is following those accessibility best practices as well. So look for that. It's probably going to be after a few weeks hiatus, coming to you this summer. So that'll be the summer series. We'll be nice and ready for the fall with all the skills that we need to create this accessible content, not just for our learners, but for our families, for our staff as well, to make sure that, you know, everyone who's part of our systems is has access to the information. Any parting thoughts before we wrap up for the afternoon? I'll leave it open. Anyone want to see us out with a parting thought?
I appreciate what everybody brings to the table. Thank you.
That's a great note to end on. And I just want to say that I appreciate you all. We appreciate you so much from the AIM Center and from the cohort as a whole. Really appreciate the work that you do and appreciate your time coming to us for these AIM tips and sharing your knowledge and your understanding of these topics. All right, everybody. Well, that wraps up AIM Tip 7. Be on the lookout for an email with a recording and additional resources. So thank you so much, everybody, and have a great afternoon. Enjoy the
Thank
rest of your
you.
week.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.